We're going to have a look at how to prune summer raspberries. The variety that we're using is Yummy, which is a dwarf variety, and they are in pots. If, however, you're growing your summer raspberries in the ground and they are tall canes, then exactly the same principle applies. You will just be looking at supporting yours and tying yours in, where we won't need to do that with this dwarf variety. All you'll need for this is a pair of clean secateurs and then something to pop your cuttings into. My cuttings do go straight into the compost and I don't find that they cause any issues. However, I have heard people say that they sometimes shoot in the compost. So I tend to just chop them up into sort of inch pieces, but if you're worried about that, then either into a hot compost or soak them in a bucket of water to deteriorate the stems before you add them to your compost. So these are the two bushes that we started the grow along with together, and they are now looking quite a bit different. So this is the one that actually struggled to pick up, and it has far less stems than the other. And then this is the one that was just starting to put on fruit the last time we looked at it, and as you can see, there is absolutely loads of stems down at the bottom here. So we're going to have a look at doing this one first. So the first thing to note with our summer raspberries and how they're different than our autumn raspberries is that they actually fruit on our second year canes, so floricanes. So first thing we're going to do is actually look at the ones that have the fruit on and then take those stems back down as far as we can get them to the surface level. So find some with some fruit on and then trace that stem down to the bottom and then just cut it as low as you can and as cleanly as you can. So that's the first stem there. So I haven't got any that have obviously got fruit on the top now, but we can now start to see the distinction between the older stems and the newer stems, or some that are maybe diseased and just damaged and want taking out. So any that are looking nice and green and young, we're going to leave in, and then any that are looking brown, we're going to remove. Okay, so that is the trimming now done on all of these. And you can see that the canes that are left have the newer growth on the top and have the lighter stems as well at the bottom. And then for this one, the majority of these are actually newer stems. So I'm just looking really for anything that looks unhealthy. And a few of the older stems. There's one down there. Just give that a spin. That's the only one I'm actually going to remove off of this one. So like I said, this one didn't actually flower this year and produce any fruit. So all these stems on here are now going to be floricanes for next year. So the next step that we want to look at with these is just to give these a little bit of a weed and just remove any dropped foliage. And although the foliage itself will be offering some sort of mulch, we're going to add a little bit of compost onto this, and we don't want any of these leaves to be harbouring any disease. So by removing them, we are helping the health of the plant, hopefully. And just disturb the soil a little bit, make sure we got no weeds growing in there. And do the same with the other one. So I have trimmed these a little bit later this year because it's been so mild and they have been fruiting still. Usually we would expect to do these straight after they finish flowering in the summer, so a couple of months ago maybe, but I've just left them and they should be absolutely fine. It shouldn't cause any issues with them. I'm going to remove a centre branch there just because it's a bit close to the others. Just remove that one out. Being in pots, obviously raspberries do spread. So one thing that we're finding, particularly in this one, which is a bit stronger, is that we've got some new growth down here, over here, and another cane coming up here. That's completely normal. If yours are in the ground, then you would actually be looking at removing any that are outside of the bed that you want these to be in. So just keep an eye on that. Once you have finished trimming your full-size canes, the other thing that you're going to do is tie them into any support. So we're not actually reducing any height off of these at the moment because this is what's going to fruit for us in the summer next year, and we'll start seeing buds on these quite soon. If any of these are too tall, then one of the things that you can do is come February, you're just going to trim them back down to your highest support. But at the moment, it's usually better to leave them unless you are worried that they're going to snap. But if you can just gently bend them and tie them into the supports, then I would do that at this point. I'm just topping these with some homemade compost, and we do, as before, want to avoid actually burying the crown. If you have any ericaceous hanging around, then they do like a little bit of acid, so they would appreciate that mixed in. If you have manure, then just make sure that it's not actually going right up to the stems. Leave a little bit of a gap around it. So I've added about an inch, and I'm not putting any on this centre. And then that's just going to help protect it over winter, and then also offer it a little bit of feed as that's watered in with the rain as well. And then that's it for the care of these raspberries until February, if you've got long ones, at which point you're going to want to cut any back that are too long. Otherwise, we'll be looking at them again next year when they're ready to start fruiting, and adding another little bit of compost just to feed them as well. But until then, they are completely hardy. If you've got an area that is slightly more sheltered from the wind, then that will help them. If you don't, then they will be absolutely fine wherever they were before.